Hello, everybody, and welcome to week 13 here. And these are the predictions for that week. Last week, I went 9-4, feeling pretty good. Before we dive right into it, I want to quickly say subscribe if you're new, greatly appreciate it. Leave a like, the whole spiel at this point. We've crossed over 300 subscribers recently, and I'm very appreciative for everyone that subscribed. And if you're new, stick around, you get greatly appreciated. So to kick things off, the first of three Thanksgiving Day games, the Chicago Bears at 4-7 make the trip over to Detroit, who are 10-1 and 10-point favorites. The Bears the past few weeks have been playing some really good games, a lot of tight losses, but Caleb Williams is looking really good. But the thing is, those, especially the past 2 weeks, those games were in Chicago. It was a little bit easier for a rookie to get a solid offense going when it's at home. They're entering very hostile territory by heading to Detroit on Thanksgiving. The Lions are a team that will not play. It's a very tough team for a rookie to play. They will not go relatively easy on them. Of course, not saying that the other teams have been, but it's just the fact that the games have looked pretty easy for Caleb Williams the past few weeks. I do not expect that at all this week. The combo of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery for the Lions offense has been a massive focal point the past few weeks. I'm expecting it to continue that way. I really like how the Lions have been playing week in, week out, finding new ways to win. It's Thanksgiving. I know the Lions don't have the best track record on Thanksgiving, but if there's any time to kind of right the ship in that factor, this is the time to do it against a divisional foe, trying to still maintain that lead in the division they have over Minnesota and Green Bay. Again, this should be a great game. I have the Lions winning this one. I say it should be a great game because it's going to be a lot of fun to watch the Lions cook on Thanksgiving. I do have the Lions. The second Thanksgiving Day game this year is the New York Giants at 2-9, making the trip to Dallas, who are 4-7 and 4-point favorites. I understand that it's tradition for Dallas to play on Thanksgiving, but this is just not going to be it's not going to be a great game. I do not expect a lot of entertainment to happen during this. There is some college football going on around this same time. I might be watching that a little bit instead. But nonetheless, it's NFL football on Thanksgiving. You have to have the Cowboys play, and it's a divisional game. Tommy DeVito did not look good last week against the Buccaneers, and I know there's some uncertainty that he might not be playing. I'm pretty sure the idea, at least according to Brian Dable, is that he will be playing in this one. The Cowboys are still going to be going with Cooper Rush after they had a massive win against the Commanders. Ruined the tank for sure, but that was a very chaotic game. It kind of summed up the Cowboys season pretty darn well. And I think they're able to ride that a bit more. Now they get the Giants who are in an even bigger tank situation at this point. So I do have the Cowboys winning this game, but I am not expecting this to be a high scoring game. This is honestly the perfect game to have Thanksgiving dinner for, because really, unless you are a Giants or a Cowboys fan, and even then you might be rooting against your team, but you're not going to have a real interest in this game. Nonetheless, the Cowboys are going to find a way on Thanksgiving, in part because the Giants have just been more incompetent this season, but do have the Cowboys. The final Thanksgiving Day game, and by far the best of them, and I might be a little bit biased in saying that, but it is the Miami Dolphins at 5-6, making the trip to the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field, and the Packers, who are 8-3 and 3.5-point favorites. I am scared for this one. This is a massive game for the Dolphins, one that they kind of don't need to win. There is some weird workaround that can still get them into the playoffs to 10-7 if they lose this game. But for the most part, this is a must win for Miami. You would rather win out and put it into your own hands with very minor help than need massive help to get into the playoffs. So the Dolphins want to need to win. Weather gonna be cold, very light chances of snow. Obviously, all that is favoring the Packers. Miami does not have the best track record in cold weather, even dating back 32 years. I'm pretty sure the stat was Miami has won once in 30 below since in 32 years. It's not been a good track record for Miami. But at the same time, this does feel like a different Dolphins team. I don't fully know what to expect. I'm hoping it's a good game. I am terrified of Josh Jacobs. He has been playing so well these past few weeks. The Packers' ground game is incredible. Miami's run defense isn't the greatest. And even then, Jordan Love, he's playing mistake-free football, at least he did last week. And even for the most part, it has been pretty much mistake-free. He's playing really well. I'm a big fan of what Jordan Love has done and what the Packers have done this season. This is going to be a great game, but again, I am a Dolphins fan. I'm going to pick Miami to win and hope that if Miami somehow pulls this off, be on the lookout for the Dolphins come January to be able to make a splash in the playoffs, maybe. So I do have the Dolphins to win and keeping the season alive that much longer. The Black Friday game is between the Las Vegas Raiders at 2-9. They're making a trip to Kansas City. They play the Chiefs, who are 10-1 and 12.5-point favorites. Again, I do all these predictions recordings on Tuesday, so I'd not be surprised by the time you're seeing this or by the end of the week. This line is a lot more in favor of Kansas City, in part because it does seem like Aiden O'Connell is going to get the start due to Minshew breaking his collarbone. And that's kind of the main thing surrounding this game. The Chiefs have been playing, again, they're playing well. They're 10-1 for a reason. The offense is starting to pick things up. The defense was a disappointing showing against Carolina, but for the most part this season, the Chiefs defense is playing phenomenally well. My thing was, if you look back towards last season, on Christmas, is the Raiders walked into Arrowhead and upset the Chiefs. With Minshew, that is definitely more likely than with AOC, and I know AOC started that game last season for the Raiders, but it's still, this is clearly more so Minshew's team this year, and him going down sucked. He was playing well against Denver. Of course, not well enough to get the win, but still. But yeah, with Minshew being out, this is definitely a lot more in favor of the Chiefs. I have more faith in the Chiefs because of this. And also in part because the Raiders have like 3 running backs injured and out for this game. So I do have the Chiefs winning. I'm expecting a big game from the Chiefs. Although how big, I'm not really sure. It is still a divisional game, and those are played toughly. But nonetheless, I do have the Chiefs to go to 11-1. Moving on to the Sunday slate, we kick things off with the Los Angeles Chargers at 7-4 and 1.5-point favorites, making a trip to Atlanta, who are 6-5 and coming off of their bye week. Here's the thing with the Falcons is I expected them to start the season off slow, but by this point, I did expect them to be playing more of a consistent style of football. But at the same time, the bye week is now coming past. They're a little bit more healthy. I feel like they'll go in this final stretch where they kind of need to play a bit better. I feel like they're going to be playing up to a better level. With the Chargers, they're looking to bounce back. It was a tough loss to the Ravens on Monday Night Football, and a game that which Herbert played decently well. The main issue is the ground game, especially with J.K. Dobbins getting injured. As of right now, there is no update on what Dobbins' status is for this week. All we know is that it's a knee injury that held him out of the entire second half on Monday night. And I definitely do not like the sound of that. J.K. Dobbins was having one hell of a season. And we saw in that second half that Dobbins was a big part of that Chargers run game, as they had -6 yards in the second half on the ground. The Falcons coming off their bye and playing at home, I do kind of like that setup a bit more than the Chargers making a cross-country trip. It's just I don't have full faith in the Falcons to be able to like show me that they can be a more complete team. This is a good time to start it. I was going back and forth on this game. I do have the Falcons to win purely because I do not trust the Chargers ground game in this without J.K. Dobbins, assuming he's not playing. And I do not trust the Chargers receiving room besides Ladd McConkey. Besides those two guys are massive pieces to this Chargers team. They have one of them, not the other. And besides McConkey, the Chargers receivers don't have the most sure of hands. Whereas Atlanta, off the bye, I think they're going to be playing with good momentum. I do have the Falcons to win this game. Next up, the Pittsburgh Steelers at 8-3 make the trip to Cincinnati, who are 4-7 and 3-point favorites for this game. I know the Bengals offense is a highly explosive offense. They've been they've been playing really, really well in losing efforts. But the thing is with the Steelers is, yes, that was a bad loss, but they're still a really good team. Their defense is still top-notch, even though he did not really show it on Thursday night, in part because TJ Watt was a no-show. I do not expect that to happen again in this game. If TJ Watt goes back-to-back weeks being no-shows, there's a completely different conversation that needs to be had about that. I doubt it happens. The offense still played really well, or at least well enough that they probably should have beat the Browns on Thursday night. Russell Wilson is throwing the ball well, not making too many mistakes, just taking what the defense is giving him, and sometimes when needing to, making a big-time throw to help win games. He did it against Washington. He nearly did it against Cleveland with that touchdown pass. But still, the ground game looked okay. I expected it to look a little bit better against Cincy, because the thing is, Cincy's defense isn't the greatest. And the way that Cleveland was able to beat Pittsburgh was kind of through the ground. They had 3 rushing touchdowns, and the Bengals' run offense has not been the same this season compared to seasons past. So I don't have full faith in Cincy. I am shocked that they are favored in this game, but part of it is probably just because the fact that, hey, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have been playing absolutely insanely well. At some point, that kind of performances need to result in the win, but at the same time, they just might not. Or the Steelers defense could just all of a sudden really turn it on, play a lot better than they did last week. We'll see. I do have the Steelers to win this game on the road, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's a really close game. I'm just expecting the Steelers defense to make a play when needing to late, so give me the Steelers. Next up, the Arizona Cardinals at 6-6 make the trip to Minnesota, who are 9-2 and 3.5 point favorites. Both of these teams played weird games last week. Minnesota got the win, but it wasn't in that same dominant fashion that I was hoping for out of them, especially the defensive side. Played a little bit lackluster against Caleb Williams in the passing game, in part because Williams was able to extend plays against them for the most part and found open receivers. Now they get to guard Kyler Murray, who is a better version of Caleb Williams at this point. I don't think it's an outrageous thing to say. He's even more mobile and has more speed. He can make throws better, even just from the pocket, and can read the defenses better. I do really like Kyler Murray, and the Cardinals are coming off of a really, really tough loss to the Seahawks. They're looking to bounce back. This is a good game to bounce back in. Their defense played Seattle well. The issue was Kyler Murray threw an interception that was a pick six, and from there, kind of just spiraled out of control. The offense couldn't finish drives properly, and they wound up taking a bad loss. But I do like their chances to bounce back here and play a better style of football and play a better game. I do have the Cardinals winning this one because Minnesota, I don't know how much magic they have left. Sam Darnold played well last week, but it's one really, really good week out of the past 3 or 4 that have been mediocre to not very great. So I just don't know. That defense is still going to be the focal point and going to be a reason why they win a lot of games down the stretch, especially when the weather gets colder. But they play in a dome stadium, so it's not like the weather fully matters for them in this game. So I do have the Cardinals winning, but it's probably going to be a really, really good game. All right, next up, the Indianapolis Colts at 5-7 and 3-point favorites make the trip to Foxborough and play the Patriots, who are 3-9. Neither team played well last week in their respective games. The Colts did not get a touchdown against the Lions, but to be fair, it is against the Lions, a team that not a lot of people expect them to be able to win. New England pretty much held scoreless for 3 quarters. I mean, they had that big touchdown by Drake May. That was a fantastic throw into broken coverage that got them on the board finally in the 4th. And then they had that scoop and score when Skylar Thompson was in. It's a whatever situation. Here's the Colts, I feel like, played better defensively last week, given the quality of opponent compared to the Patriots did. And it's coming from a Dolphins fan. The Lions are a much better team. And the fact that the Colts defense was really only really picked apart through the ground game is a big factor in the fact that, hey, the Colts have a good pass defense. Meanwhile, New England got completely decimated through the air while they played the ground pretty well against Miami. So it's probably going to be a case of New England's ground offense versus the Colts passing offense. And there's obviously a clear lean there, but then you factor in the run game from the Colts and the passing game from New England, how that could play. I would not be surprised if this game is a very close game that comes down to the wire. I do have the Colts winning, though, in part because I feel like their defense is going to be able to step up. The Patriots had a lot of pre-snap penalties and a lot of penalties in general that has cost them multiple times this season. Didn't necessarily cost them against Miami, but it was a clear factor early on in that game. I do have the Colts, but if New England can play discipline and stay relatively penalty-free, this should be a fantastic game. Next up, the Seattle Seahawks at 6-5 and 2.5-point favorites make the trip out to MetLife Stadium. They play the Jets, who are 3-8. Jets coming off of their bye week, they have to be feeling healthier, but still not great about how the season has gone. They fired Joe Douglas to begin the bye week, and it's just a whole mess of a situation over there. No clear future in sight, no clear style of offense, no clear style of defense. Just an overall dysfunctional mess, aka the New York Jets. The Seattle Seahawks coming off of a great win against the Arizona Cardinals, a game of which their defense played phenomenally well, no touchdowns given up. The offense did enough to win this game, but would have probably liked to see a bit more considering the chances that they had. But a win is a win. And now they make the cross-country trip against a team who at this point is more so trying just to play spoiler than anything. The Jets, while still technically in the playoff race, don't really have a real opportunity as they still have to play the Dolphins twice. I do have Seattle winning this game in a sense that the defense is playing really well. Geno Smith is doing a good job keeping control of the football and not turning the ball over a lot. And the Jets, again, just pure dysfunction going on over there. I have no faith in them to do anything effectively. So yeah, give me the Seahawks. The Tennessee Titans at 3-8 make the trip over to the nation's capital. They play the Washington Commanders, who are 7-5 and 5.5-point favorites. The Titans had a fantastic win against the Houston Texans last week in a game that Will Levis played really, really well in, and that really was a surprisingly fantastic game on his part, all things considered. The defense obviously didn't play the greatest. They did benefit from special teams errors by Houston, specifically that missed field goal that they had. But in a game against Washington, whose special teams is a very hit or miss thing, you're going to have to be able to make a play here or there on the special team side. And again, with Washington, who knows how their special teams is going to play week in, week out, or even play in, play out. They had the block field goal against Dallas, but then the kickoff unit was terrible, basically. At least the kickoff defense unit was bad. They missed their own extra point that set up a onside kick return for a touchdown. Washington is just a weird team, and it all is really circling back to Cliff Kingsbury. There's so much that I feel like Washington could be doing better. Part of it is that ground game, which is a very important step in Washington's offense, it seems. But Cliff Kingsbury is either just ignoring it at this point, or it's just not working well enough for reasons that is more so feeling like them trying to protect Jaden Daniels than using his abilities to the fullest. We'll see. I do have Washington winning. They're 5.5-point favorites. This is a game they should win and bounce back finally because they've lost 3 straight. But who knows with Washington at this point? It's the second half of the season. Cliff Kingsbury is their offensive coordinator. Shit could go sideways fast, but nonetheless, give me Washington. The Houston Texans at 7-5 and 5-point favorites make the trip to Jacksonville, who are 2-9 and coming off their bye week. And much like the Jets, are in a complete kind of dysfunctional state at the moment. I have no faith in them to do much offensively or defensively. And it's just who knows what the future looks like there. They're going to have to ride with Trevor Lawrence a little bit longer because of the contract they gave him. And Brian Thomas is a big focal point for that offense, and it's going to be a great piece for them in the future. But you can't waste these years of the contract for him. And there's going to be a wasted year this year. We'll see how next year goes. Focus is on this game, though. Houston looking to break their skid. They've been playing very weird recently. The offense not fully going how we expect it to be. The defense playing some lackluster football as well. They need a win bad, otherwise they are at risk of blowing this division lead despite winning 2 games over the Colts. The Colts are only 2 games back, basically. They lose this week and the Colts win, only a game back with 5 weeks to go. Who knows what can happen in that division to end the year. But Houston needs this win. I do have Houston winning. I expect Joe Mixon to have a pretty good game like he normally does for Houston. Stroud needs to have a big-time game and not make as many mistakes as he has been the past few weeks. This is the game Houston needs, very similar to Washington, that they had such a good start to the season, but the past few weeks have just really faltered. This is the game that Houston needs to win. I think they do win it, and I feel bad for Jaguars fans in the process. The Los Angeles Rams at 5-6 and 3-point favorites make the trip to the Big Easy. They play the New Orleans Saints, who are 4-7. This should be a fantastic game. The Saints have really stepped it up a notch since firing Dennis Allen, and it is really fun to see. I do like the majority of the pieces the Saints have on the roster. It's just Dennis Allen was not a good coach. Now that they have someone else to step in and kind of bring the team to a different path and different direction, it's been working. They're on a 2-game winning streak. They've been a relatively fun team to watch. The Rams lose last week to the Eagles, and what was just a bad game on their part. I mean, they had a few moments here or there that was like, damn, they're looking really good. They could probably do something in this. But then Saquon Barkley came in and ruined everything. My thing with the Rams is they need to be more consistent on third down. Against Miami, they struggled massively and lost. Against New England, they played better on third down, got that win. And then against the Eagles, they struggled again on third down and lost again. So that's the thing. You need to be consistent on third down. This is should be a great game, kind of a game I was going back and forth on due to it being in New Orleans. But at the end of the day, I do have the Rams winning this one, in part because Matthew Stafford still playing really well. Puka Nacua playing well. Cooper Kupp having his moments. This is a team that is a very young team and has the pieces, and are still very much in this division race. I think they're definitely look to catch up to everyone else and try and hopefully gain a game over some of them, in the sense of like, if Arizona loses and they win, they have a half game lead. If the Seahawks lose and they win, they're tied with them and all that. So I do have the Rams to win. I think they get back into the division hunt really easily. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 5-6 and 6-point favorites make the trip to Carolina, who are 3-8. The Panthers had an incredibly played game against the Chiefs last week, a game that came down to a 31-yard field goal. If only the Panthers had a better scramble, contained Mahomes better, who knows how the game could have played out. But Bryce Young looked really good. To be fair, it was also around this point last season that Bryce Young played his best game against the Packers, and then kind of faltered off towards the end, and then transitioned to this season, not play well. So we'll see if last week was a very similar story. But at the same time, Tampa, dominant win over the Giants last week. Baker Mayfield playing well again. Mike Evans being back is a big boost to this team. I do really like Tampa, and they're still my division pick, despite being technically 2 games back of the Falcons due to being swept by the Falcons. But I do still really like Tampa and how they're playing and what their team is built around. And Baker Mayfield being a great quarterback. I have Tampa winning this game. But the 6 points is definitely an interesting one with how well Carolina played against Kansas City. I was expecting this to be a closer point spread. I do think this could be a closer game. But at the same time, I mean, when Tampa is hot, both on the ground and through the air, both sides of the ball, they're a really, really good team and can dominate opponents. This is a type of matchup that can favor that. So we'll see. I do have Tampa to win nonetheless. The game of the week this week is the Philadelphia Eagles at 9-2, making the trip to Baltimore, who are 8-4 and 3-point favorites. Baltimore being favored in this game kind of surprises me, in part because, I mean, both teams do have MVP caliber players in Lamar Jackson and Saquon Barkley. But the thing is, Philly has been playing the better football over the past few weeks. The big thing is, though, they did lose Brandon Graham last week due to injury. He tore his tricep, if I remember correctly. That is a very tough loss for that front seven, and they're about to play Derrick Henry. So you don't want to have a weak front seven against Derrick Henry. I do still think Philly has a really good team. Hell, Saquon Barkley been playing really well. The thing with Baltimore is I'm curious on if Roquan Smith will be able to play this week. I imagine he will be able to. But even then, without Roquan Smith, the Ravens played well against the ground last week against the Chargers, in part because J.K. Dobbins went down, and from there, the Chargers don't really have a ground game, and Saquon is a different beast than J.K. Dobbins, and J.K. Dobbins was still having a pretty good game up until he got injured. So that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on. When it comes to the passing games, the Eagles do have the more weapons. And the fact that Jalen Hurts is also, like, both quarterbacks can use their legs a bit more, but Jalen Hurts has just that extra factor in the sense of, hey, he's also willing to just bulldoze people. Like, he can take a hit. Not to say Lamar Jackson can't, but he's more so the elusive type of scrambling quarterback, and it works well for his style. The thing that's making me lean Baltimore, and do have Baltimore to win, is Lamar Jackson record against the NFC. He has one loss to an NFC opponent, and that was against Daniel Jones and the Giants a few years back. So listen, Lamar again, fantastic against the NFC. For as good as Philly is, there's just some kind of magic that allows Lamar to win games like this, especially in the regular season. So I do have the Ravens winning, and Lamar gonna still only have one loss, and that would be to Daniel Jones in the NFC. Sunday Night Football. The San Francisco 49ers at 5-6 make the trip to Buffalo, who are 9-2 and 7-point favorites. Once again, Recording these on Tuesday, would not be surprised if this line is leading more towards its favorite of Buffalo come game time, especially because there's forecasts of like 1.5 feet of snow for this game, apparently. That's going to be a massive favor towards Buffalo, on top of the fact that the Niners are still incredibly injured. Who knows the status for like half their team at this point? And typically I would be like, okay, whatever, just give CMC the ball. But CMC has not been playing well these past 3 weeks either, and the Niners are in a free fall at this point. They're a team that is pretty much like riding a roller coaster. They have really good seasons, followed up by a really bad year or mediocre year, and then back to having good seasons. 2020 made the Super Bowl, 21 missed the playoffs, 22 and 23 NFC Championship game appearances, with 23 being the Super Bowl. Now this year, another mediocre season, and now just who knows what's going on in that front office. There needs some consistency there, and injuries are definitely not helping. Now they're about to play Buffalo, who are gaining people back from injury. Matt Milano is expected to play, I believe, and if he is active to play this game, he's a massive addition to that Buffalo defense, which is already a really good defense that's playing this season. On top of just Josh Allen being Josh Allen, and when it's going to be a snow-covered game and the ground game's a massive factor, Josh Allen might have like legit running back numbers of insane amount of carries and insane amount of yards for a quarterback. We'll see. I do have Buffalo to win this game, even before I had worried about the weather conditions and everything else. But this is a chance. Also, plus if Buffalo wins and Miami loses, they clinch the division. You know damn well they were going to want to do that to begin this early on in the season. So yeah, I do have Buffalo to win. To cap things off, Monday Night Football, the Cleveland Browns at 3-8 make the trip to the Mile High City. They play the Denver Broncos, who are 7-5 and 5.5-point favorites. Cleveland, a very nice win against Pittsburgh on Thursday Night Football. Denver, a good win against Vegas last week. Here's the thing with these teams. Cleveland is a team of just who knows what's going to happen. Jameis Winston being the quarterback, I've been loving it the past few weeks, even in some losses. He's just a fun guy to root for. And Cleveland's a team that is going to begin to surprise people down this final stretch because of the fact that Jameis Winston might throw for 300 yards and 5 touchdowns, or he might throw for 150 and 5 interceptions. Who really knows? With Denver, their defense played well against Minshew. They finally got pressure in that second half. The offense is playing really well this season. Bo Nix is looking like the offensive rookie of the year, and is looking like Denver has found their guy behind center. This is such a game where would not be surprised at all if Denver finds a way to blow this and lose. It's just been the case. That's just been the case of Denver the past few years, and it's been a case of Cleveland to play spoiler like this the past few years. But I do think this is a different Denver team. I do have the Broncos to win this game. I don't think they're going to be but I don't think they're going to have the same old style of Denver play where this is a must-win game. You guys see what you can do, and they throw out a stinker. I think Bo Nix will play well. I think the defense will play well. Curious about how the ground game would be a factor in this for Denver, and how their run defense will play against Cleveland. But at the end of the day, if Bo Nix throws for 300 and 3 touchdowns, they're probably going to win. So give me the Broncos. All right, those are my predictions for Week 13 of the NFL season. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, subscribe, leave a like. You know the whole drill. See you all next time. Have yourselves a damn good one. Peace.